the book I read is called Do You Think This Is Strange? And it's about a 17-year-old boy with autism. I really love this book because I worked with a boy with autism, and I am always interested in reading more about it and learning more about autism. So even though it's a fictional book, you still get some insight into his perspective and what someone with autism might think like and how they perceive the world. So I'm going to read you guys a passage. It starts off when Freddie is watching a deer standing by a crosswalk. This is my memory of the day when I first realized I am a deer. The doe crossed the street, the people cheered, and I had no idea why it merited celebration. But I tumbled and tipped the thought through my mind, and the best theory I could come up with was this. The deer doesn't belong, but still tries to fit in. People appreciate it when someone tries to fit in. Here was the deer trying to adapt. Here was the deer trying to live its life in an implausible world. Here was the deer. It learned how to cross the street. That was good enough for now. The only thing it cared about at that moment was crossing the road in one piece. I think people should live their lives guided by this principle. Try to cross the street without getting hit by a truck. I realized that my goal for the day wasn't so different from a deer's. If the deer gets through the day without getting hit by a truck, its day is green. My day is green when I get through it without being hit by a conversation. I have such a difficult time talking to people that the problem is the conversation itself, not the contents of the conversation. Avert the collision, avoid the conversation. Problem solved. There are times, however, when a conversation cannot be sidestepped. When that happens, the best strategy is never go off script. Scrutinize a blank spot on a wall or stare into the distance and watch the clock tick. When spoken to, answer succinctly. Never volunteer an opinion. Opinions never work out. Add only facts. Contribute nothing else. Be a deer. 17 years into being me, it's reasonable to expect that I would never deviate from this strategy. But I can't help breaking away from it every day. It's one of the things I don't understand about me. I can't keep my mouth shut. Alright, so that kind of gives you guys a brief idea of how Freddie sees the world and the difficulties that he has conversing with people. So throughout the book, it showcases a lot of conversations that Freddie has with other people, and all the time he kind of has these voices in his head that he calls the threads. And so the threads usually tell him to do one thing, but his mind will tell him to do something differently. So because when he was younger, he attended a behavioral intervention program, and they kind of taught him how to converse properly and how to use appropriate sentences at the right times. So his mind will tell him to say those things, but usually the threads take over and they'll tell him to do something else, and he'll usually end up saying what the threads tell him to do. So he has a very hyper-literal perspective. So whenever someone asks him a question, he answers very literally. He has a hard time understanding sarcasm or humor, and he can't make any humorous comments himself, even though he knows that it's what people sometimes do. He doesn't know how to do it himself. So yeah, the book can be humorous at times, but it's also very heartbreaking. When he was younger, he met a girl at his behavioral intervention program, which was called Excalibur House, and her name was Saskia, and she also had autism. So she behaves quite differently than Freddie, though. She kind of blurts out words, and she does a lot of stimming things, so she kind of flaps her arms like she has wings. And yeah, at one point Freddie moves away, and he doesn't see Saskia again until 10 years later, when he's 17 years old and he's in his last year of high school. And so when they reconnect, he realizes that Saskia is very different than when he left her when she was 7 years old. She no longer speaks, and she kind of always has her head down. She doesn't converse with people like she used to. And so throughout their last year together, they they have a special bond between each other, and they kind of develop that more, and Saskia begins to speak again, and Freddie also remembers some things about his childhood that he kind of forgot. So throughout the book, he always talks about how his mother left, but he realizes that she actually died in a car crash. And he knew that, but he kind of pushed it out of his memory. And so that's kind of how he changed. And Saskia stopped talking. But once they were reconnected, they kind of grew together, and their relationship really helps them to grow. So this is a really good book. I would recommend it to anyone. It doesn't really fit into a particular program of studies, but it kind of fits into the hidden curriculum. So I would recommend it probably to grade 11 and 12 because there is some mature content and a lot of swearing in it. So yeah. All right. Okay, so this is my second book. And it is called 10 Birds. And I think that I'm going to read it to you guys how I would read it to a grade 1 class, because I feel like that helps you understand the book better, and it's a really good book to incorporate into math or science or other subjects as well. Alright, so you guys are going to be a grade 1 class, okay? Alright, 10 birds. Okay, so you can see the birds, and they're around a whole bunch of different materials. There's some rope, some balloons, you can see a fan, all these different supplies. Alright, so 10 birds were trying to figure out how to get to the other side of the river. Now why do you guys think this is silly? They can fly! Birds can fly. And what else? Do you see anything in the background? There's a bridge. There's a bridge too. The one they called Brilliant knew how to cross. Marching, he left 9 behind. So how did he get across the river?
Stilts.
Yeah, some stilts, or kind of a ladder thing. The one they called Quite Advanced engineered her way. Bubbling, she left 8 behind. So how did that one get across the river?
Some sort of water boat contraption.
Yeah, kind
It's
of
a
like
water
a motor
unicycle.
type thing. Yeah. And what do you guys notice about her name? Quite Advanced. What does that mean to you?
She's above the rest.
She's above the rest.
Intellectually.
Yeah, maybe smarter, faster, who knows?
Quite.
The one they called Magnificent had an idea. Swooshing, he left 7 behind. How did that guy cross?
Kite. On the wind. Flew, technically.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one they called Shows Great Promise figured it out. Squeaking, she left 6 behind. How did she cross?
Wheel and rope.
Pulley. Flying.
The one they called Extraordinary found a solution. Floating, he left 5 behind.
Balloons.
The one they called Outstanding devised a plan. Launching, she left 4 behind. So she launched herself across the river. So all of their names so far are kind of mean that they're smarter or maybe better than the rest, right? The one they called Highly Satisfactory had little trouble. Drifting, he left 3 behind. So how did he get across? A fan!
A boat? Yeah.
With the fan.
Oh, yeah.
Like an airboat.
Yeah. The one they called Exceptional thought it was simple. Swinging, she left 2 behind.
A crane.
Yep, she swung across. The one they called Remarkable came up with a design. Flapping, he left 1 behind. Now how did he get across?
Built wings for his wings.
Yeah.
Manufactured wings.
He already has wings. And the one they called Needs Improvement got to the other side just the same, leaving none behind. Now how did the last one get across?
The simplest
Walked
way.
across the bridge. And you guys think maybe that was the smartest way all along?
Yeah.
That the others could have just walked across?
with the least flair.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about his name, Needs Improvement?
They all relate to like report cards or rubrics.
Yep. And his name sounds like maybe he's not as smart, right? But actually, he might be the smartest. Because he found the simplest way to get across. And this is all the birds on the other side. Okay. So at the end of reading this book, I decided I would use it for a science lesson. Because in the grade 1 science program of studies, they focus on building things. So I would have the students build bridges. So I brought some marshmallows and toothpicks. You guys can try it out if you want. You can just try a few sticking some things together. And those ones are kind of stale. But these ones are fresh if you feel like snacking on them. Because I read that if you leave it out for a day and they're a little bit more stale, it's easier to put the toothpicks in and it's a little bit more sturdy.
Nice.
But you could also use this in math, for counting. You could do activities with subtraction, how many birds are left if 3 cross the river. And you can also use it to kind of talk about the hidden curriculum, so the labels that they use in the book, right? So they call some of the birds magnificent. One of them is called Needs Improvement. And we know that maybe the labels aren't always true. So the bird who was called Needs Improvement might actually have been the smartest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that might be true of your friends. So it's not nice to give people labels. And so you can kind of talk about that with your grade 1 class. So yeah, this book can be used for a lot of different things. I would recommend it.
How did you pick that book?
It was
Did you just come across it?
sitting on the desk. I looked at it. And then I was talking to Beth.
Excellent.
Very good.